are the don't tread on me people.
Right.
You are being tread on every single day. Your rights are being tread on, states' rights are being tread on, your constitutional rights are being tread on, and these folks are enriching themselves. This guy's buying hundreds of millions in bonds.
Well, I'm here with Governor Tim Walz, my governor in the state of Minnesota, and by no accident or maybe by design, Diet Mountain Dew, his favorite drink of choice, and Celsius, my favorite drink of choice.
Fired up.
Yeah.
I don't know when you sleep. Great to have you home, Ken.
Oh, I'm so glad.
DNC's here, but more importantly, they're here for the state fair, too.
Oh, my God. They had a great time the other night.
It's a good time.
Well, I'm glad to be back. This is a state that truly has shown the country a model of how we can govern. And it was just ranked as one of the top 5 places to live, one of the top 5 places to do business. Can you explain to folks what's contributing to that? Of course, you got great elected officials, but really, you guys have passed a number of wonderful policies that have contributed, for many years, by the way, contributed to the fabric of this state. So.
No, I think that's right. And look, I said you do need to elect people to be in positions to make these things happen, but you've always talked about this, Ken, as chair here, that these elections are critically important. They're a means to an end, though, and that end is better governance, better life. Yeah. And what I would say is when we had the opportunity to move legislation, we moved things that improved people's lives, meaning we made sure we implemented paid family and medical leave, sick leave pay. We invested heavily in education, in transportation. We did things common sense to make their lives a little safer, background checks, red flag laws. We leaned into being the new economy around climate, and we set a 2040 goal to decarbonize our electricity grid. We're not going to make 2040, we're going to make 2035. And those are things now, when people hear, that's not over the horizon. It's not climate change. It's not, it's for my grandkids to worry about. It's here today, and we're dealing with it. And the interesting thing about that is it creates jobs, so everybody's good with it. So I think the biggest thing, Ken, is leaning into making sure you're doing things that improve people's lives, show them that they had opportunities to thrive. Like you said, best state to raise children, best state to start a business. And I go back to this. I think that was kind of what the Democratic Party was when I was growing up. There was no debate about this. The Democratic Party was for unions, and they were for working families, and they were about improving lives. And no disrespect to the Republicans, but their job was to focus on the country club. Their job was to focus on the wealthy. And we knew that. Yeah. We knew that. And look, at that point in time, we could still get along a little bit. Now, I would even say that gap is even bigger. But I think what got lost in here was people didn't know who we stood for. They chose to vote for the billionaire, who is enriching himself and his very small, family and cadre around him.
And you remember this. I mean, the first Minnesota Miracle in the 1970s, Governor Anderson and, of course, Marty Sabo and so many, even Republicans came together to understanding that if we were going to be more than just a cold flyover state, right, we had to make deep investments in education. I think the damning thing for the Republicans is they walked away from that, but the really inspiring thing for this state, I think, is that you made the deepest investments ever. No surprise as a teacher, right? Because you understand that really our obligation is not just to the present, it's also to the future. And how can we best ensure our state's success and, frankly, our country's success, but investing in education. And I know you just briefly talked about it. Can you talk about the historic investments, not just early childhood education, but the K-12, the higher ed investments? It's a record for this state, and I think that's one of the things that's going to pay huge dividends for Minnesotans.
You're right. It's lifelong learning, and your children, as we said, everybody gets universal pre-K, they get meals in schools, they get opportunities, but I said also every family making less than $80,000 a year, you can go to any Minnesota school free. We make sure that tuition is free. It gives us those opportunities, and what we understand is it's not just the right thing to do, it's an investment for the future. You talked about that first Minnesota Miracle. What the biggest change in that was is they said we should not predicate education funding just on property tax, because what you have then is you have neighborhoods that are rich and they have beautiful schools with swimming pools. And then you have especially rural schools or inner city schools that don't have the tax base. And what they said was, no, we're going to use state money to make sure that no matter if you're on the Iron Range or you're in southern Minnesota, your kids are going to get a quality education. And I think, like you said, that was a tradition. I go back to this idea that the Republicans in Minnesota, and this is what pains me now, to see the massive change that they've made. I think about this in the beautiful governor's residence where I live. There's a little garage and carriage house on the back that has an apartment on the top. Republican Governor Al Quie, those people housed families back there, immigrant families. And I mean, Al Quie's first inaugural address talks about the need to rely on our immigrant heritage and to educate their children and to bring them into Minnesota. So I think what we did was we went back to our roots. We went back to that Minnesota miracle. We focused on improving people's lives. And I saw this around the country. People want security. They want security in their jobs. They want security in their families. They want security in their communities. And this sense right now of chaos and uncertainty, it feels like it could all be pulled out from under you. And then you got a guy in the White House who says, only I can solve it. Well, that's so disrespectful.
Yeah, that's right.
So
well, I mean, moving from a state that works to a country that's not working right now, give me a sense. I mean, obviously, you said this on the campaign trail, as did Vice President Harris, just trying to open people's eyes to what this election was really about, right?
Yeah.
And, I think President Biden said it best in 2020 when he said this is about the fight for the soul of our nation, not the fight for the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, but truly those values that united us and, like respect for our Constitution and due process and the rule of law. It's just all been thrown out right now by this dictator in chief. And, it's just devastating to see what he's done in 6 months. I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts, what's happening in this country.
Well, the questions I have, where are the don't tread on me people?
Right.
You are being tread on every single day. Your rights are being tread on, states' rights are being tread on, your constitutional rights are being tread on, and these folks are enriching themselves. This guy's buying hundreds of millions in bonds. They throw around words like socialism, communism, don't know what the difference is. When did the U.S. government start buying companies?
Right.
I said, if you're a free market person, on so many fronts, and the total disdain for this, and I think this guy has been a genius on division and making us divided, of trying to get back to this. And I think we need to hold folks accountable. And look, we see it here. It's the chaos. Like, I don't believe this guy planned anything in his life. He never paid his bills. He went bankrupt numerous times. He threw other people under the bus. I mean, that's how he lives.
He even bankrupted a casino, which that's
impossible,
really tough to do.
Impossible. The most successful thing he's done is grift off the American people now. I said, with that being the case, of us trying to get back to what that's not how other people operate. So when people, look, when they passed this horrible piece of legislation, and all of our Republican representatives in Minnesota voted for it, they made sure that it doesn't go into effect until January of 27, most of it. But the thing they forgot is other people plan ahead. So we see rural hospitals preparing to close down. We see rural nursing homes that don't understand how their finances are going to work over the horizon. We see individual families now. He told us he would have back down $1.50 gas. Well, he's a liar, and he lied about that, can't do it. So I think the Democratic Party, I do believe we have to continuously point out they're undemocratic, they're illegal, they're unconstitutional actions, and hope the courts do their work. But I also think, like we did in Minnesota, offering them alternative. There's an alternative form of government here. And I do think, I said this during the campaign, Project 2025 was a roadmap. Vice President Harris was 100% right. She told us that he was going to use troops to occupy our cities, and there he is. Everything she said was right on. But the one thing I think we make the case of was he promised so hard on these things to improve people's lives, and they're not feeling it. So this gives us golden opportunity.
It does.
To step in and provide those.
I've said this. I mean, we can't be the defender of the status quo either, which is that most working people in this country do not believe that the status quo is working for them.
That's right.
So to your point, Governor, and you've done this in Minnesota, right, with the legislation you've passed.
Be bold.
Be bold. Stand up. Fight for what you believe in. But when you get into office, actually deliver. Use the power you have. And speaking of that, right after we won the trifecta back in 2022, you and Speaker Hortman, Leader Dietzich, and it's just amazing to think that we've lost both of them.
It was 72 hours after that election.
Yeah, I know. And what's amazing to me is thinking about that we've lost both of them in the last 8 months now. It's tragic on so many levels, but let's focus on the good piece of what you and Speaker Hortman and Leader Dietzich were able to do, because I talk about this all over the country, because I'm so proud as a Minnesotan to see people led by you to stand up and actually use the power that you have when you have it. You said something. You said power is fleeting. You don't know when we'll ever have it again.
You don't bank it to win another election.
You don't.
You burn it.
Yeah, and I've seen this, Governor, in my time in politics. Democrats and Republicans who get out into office, and the first thing they see decisions through is, how does this help me?
Yes.
How does it help get me reelected?
Yes.
You guys said, all of you, let's just go. Let's just fight. Let's actually be bold and stand for something.
We made a whiteboard and listed all the things
Yes.
we wanted to get done.
Yes.
And I remember partway through that legislative session, we had some folks in there and they're like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Look at the things we got done. And it was about a third of the list, which was amazing, like no other legislative session. And I remember both Melissa and Carrie are saying, well, it's not done yet. It's not done
Let's
yet.
keep going.
That entire list got checked off.
That's right.
That entire list got checked all the way to the very end. And I think that attitude, and there was not a person in there. And I remember this for me when I voted for the ACA in a tough congressional district. And I remember at a town hall, people were yelling at me, if you vote for this, you're going to lose and go home. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. You'll have health care. I'm fine with that. So that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll go back to you. And I think it was that attitude, and I really do believe this. If there's anything Donald Trump taught us in this, and he didn't do it ethically, he didn't do it with the people's best interest at heart, but what he understood is go as hard and as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And I said, imagine a different timeline where we go as hard and fast as we can for universal health care, where we go for meals in schools, where we actually have smart legislation around climate and we make it happen. We support, and I believe this was fundamental to, if we're going to win, and we did it here in Minnesota, strengthening the right to collectively bargain and putting the power back in the hands of people in labor unions.
Yes.
That was, it here.
Yes.
You don't get anything done unless you start listing off names, the building trades,
Right,
SEIU, MAPE,
Right.
Teachers Union, all of these folks who matter and do the work of the state, they got empowered. There's states, the right to work states and all that, but there's states that employers can take you in and threaten you in meetings if you join a union. That's illegal in Minnesota.
Yeah.
So you have your own rights. And I've always maintained this, that I think the most democratic institutions we have are labor unions, where
Absolutely.
you gather together, you elect your shop steward, they make your case, and you all benefit.
That's exactly right. Now, speaking of Speaker Hortman, you guys were exceptionally close. You were working hand in glove for so many years together.
Yeah.
Just as you reflect, and I know it's been difficult for you, Governor, but what do you want to tell folks around the country who may only know her through this, the tragic way that her life was ended, this assassination? What do you want people to know about her?
Yeah, and I think too, and I don't say this lightly, I had the privilege of serving in Congress with the Giants over many years, and now in state legislature. This was a singular individual. There's very few people who were this effective. First and foremost, she was incredibly bright. She was just a steel trap intelligence. She had a lawyer's mind. I always said this, but she had a teacher's compassion and curiosity and mixed it together. She was beloved, and I would argue that you'd find and set down Republicans here, if they were being honest, they would say the same thing. She was kind, she was compassionate, but she could be fierce. But it was
very fierce when she needed
fierce.
to be. Yes.
But the thing I think about this is, and it would be hard of someone like this, she was egoless and understood this, and she was willing, and she took hard votes to get things done. And I think in a world where people say, and I don't know if they really mean it, we want you to compromise and get things done. A lot of people say it, but they want their whole way. She knew that's not how it works. We have the most closely divided. Thinking all those things you talked about we got done, we had a one-vote majority.
Right.
Last time we were tied, and we still needed to get a state budget. And what she understood was, unlike the guy who sits in the White House, she never viewed things as win-lose. Everything he approaches, somebody has to lose. Somebody has to be the loser, and he has to make himself that. She always understood when you negotiated with people, they had to deliver something too. And as long as it wasn't unethical or immoral, she didn't have to agree with the tax policy of the Republicans, but said, you know what, they need it. They need it to get this done. Their people believe it, and I can find that. She had that ability to do it. I just don't think people in this environment to think how hard it was. A tied House, a one-vote majority in the Senate, a Democratic governor. We all had to sit in a room and compromise. And this is a story that got lost in that horrific murder.
That's right.
That we finished that just 2 weeks before, and everybody said they'll never get it done. We had to make cuts to programs that Democrats liked. We did tax cuts to businesses that needed to be done to grow our economy. Right. And so both sides got something out of it. And what we came out of it was a state that's AAA bond rated, one of the best in the country to live, and they did it together. That was her sitting there, bringing them together. So
amazing.
I think to tell people this, that everybody thinks, well, it's another legislator and they're going to eulogize. I'm telling you, this was not another legislator.
That's right.
I have to say, I've seen this a couple times. I went into Congress, and one of my classmates was Gabby Giffords.
Oh, yeah.
And that group was a big class. I think there was nearly 60 of us, if you remember, in the 2006 election. And I think to a person in that class of Democrats, and probably some of the Republicans, I said, she'll be president someday. And then the tragedy of her shooting, but continuing on. And I said, that same spirit, Melissa had that.
Yeah,
it's fun.
There's no doubt. Now, I remember the night before you were put on the ticket.
We were together.
We were together. You sort of gave me a wink and a nod, that this might be happening. You didn't say anything, but you thought maybe it would, right?
I thought I had caught the bus.
Yes, exactly.
So.
You made Minnesotans so proud. And it was really fun to see you on the national stage. What are some of your favorite memories from running? Of course, I think both you and the vice president did everything you could in those 107 days. We asked. Our party was in such a bad place going into, and we needed you and Kamala to instill our party with excitement and energy, and they instilled that in the country to give people hope.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was a remarkable run, and I just want to say thank you. I'm biased, of course, but I will tell you that on behalf of our party, thank you for that magnificent run. And what do you remember? What are some of the great memories from that?
I appreciate that. And I said, a privilege of a lifetime to be with the vice president. I couldn't have been prouder, and I would agree every way that the way she carried herself and the dignity and the vision and the hopefulness and the weight of the world was on her. We knew what would happen, and she knew better than anybody what the outcome would be as if we didn't win. But I think there's several things that stood out to me. Like, look, I didn't know the vice president that well. She was in the Senate, I was in the House a little bit, and we had talked while she was in as vice president, as governor, but we were professional acquaintances or whatever. I mean, we got to know each other. And I remember there was a stop in, I believe, Pennsylvania, and it was one of the first ones. And I'm on the bus with the vice president and her husband, and it's my wife and I, and I'm still like, I can't believe it. This is crazy. And we were getting ready to get out, and it was dueling rallies on one side. All the red hats on one side, and all of our folks were there, and we were getting ready to get off the bus. And she didn't break stride. She turned around. She said, Tim, I'm proud to have you on this ticket, but never forget, we fight just as hard for that side of the street as we do this side. And she said it with no one there. There was no reporters. And she was saying it to me like, seriously, don't mistake what we're doing here.
That's right.
That one stuck out to me. And then I think this is the one where, the what ifs or whatever, it's very difficult. Like, people say, you should have been out, you should have been doing this more. It's very stifling. The security, like, I want to stop at Quick Trips and go in and talk to people. Well, that's a whole damn production. They shut down the damn...
I was just going to say, because I remember seeing you at the state fair when you came out of the state fair. And for folks who are watching this, they don't realize, like, you at the state fair, you're so accessible, you're running around to every booth, you're talking to every person. And I remember talking to Gwen and to Hope, because they came into the DFL booth with me. And there was press everywhere and security. It was crazy.
Yeah, you missed that part of it. And I said, the one that struck me is we were in southern Georgia, and there hadn't been a candidate down there. And I remember driving through these little streets headed towards to Savannah, out in the countryside. And there were little girls on the side of the road with Kamala signs that they knew she was coming by there, the big motorcade or whatever. Yeah. We stopped at a school, and it was, for me, I'm like, oh, this feels like home again.
Right.
We go into the band room, where the band is playing the fight song, where kids were in there, the football players had their jerseys on, getting ready for a game, the cheerleaders were there, and I remember we're walking in there, and the vice president's going to talk to him, and she says to me, and I had no idea of this, she said, oh, I played in the band. And I'm like looking at the campaign team. She's a band kid. There's a whole voting block out there.
Exactly.
Like, people who know this, and when you're at school, you're like a band. But the rapport she had of just talking like that. And I said the thing that I wished people could see more of, but I know it's so hard in the modern world, is just that humanity and that interaction. Yeah. It was totally unscripted, totally off the record, but it was so human to see those kids.
That's right. Not to shift gears too much, but there's just, we see so much division in this country right now. And, we have to figure out a path forward again in this country. We have to deal with the existential crisis. But what do you say we can do about this division? How do we actually bring people together again? How do we find a way to bridge this gap and focus on solutions, because most Americans, right, you know this as well as I do, most Americans just want to live their lives. They want to be able to maybe, you know, hand something off to their families. They want to be able to get ahead, not just get by. You know, most people aren't as involved in politics as you and I, and they're worried about the division in this country. So what's your message?
Yeah, that's the shame of this. Look, this was on purpose. You know, there's always been division, but like I said, we would sit down and go out together. And many of my colleagues in Congress that I was friends with, and a couple of them even held true to that and said, look, Governor's here to testify. I've got things to say, but I'm a friend. I'm not going to say it in public. And I thought that was really impressive, but it was a small number of them. The president has done this, knowing to divide it. He uses words like the enemy within, and we've never used that language. Look, I don't disagree with Republicans because they're Republicans. I disagree because they're wrong, and then I make the debate case. And I think what we have to separate here is, and look, I got in a little trouble over this, but I want to clarify. I said it. I said, I think we have to be a little meaner. We have to push back. I'm talking about towards Donald Trump and his things of making it. If you're going to talk this way, you're going to get it too. If you think you can dish it out, you're going to hear about it too. And make it clear what you're doing to hurt people. I think this is standing up against the bully and have him quit bullying people. If you want to take somebody on, come at me. Don't come at an immigrant family who's trying to make it work and is in the process to get their naturalization papers, and arrest them when they're going to court, or arrest them when they're picking up their children, or arrest them when they're going to worship. That is not who we are. And quit the straw man thing. Nobody wants a criminal here. I don't want one in the White House, and I don't want one on the streets. And I think we're the folks who understand due process matters. And so I think it's going back to people and telling them, and I've always said this, you got lied to. This isn't about you. You can come back off this ledge. You don't have to stand with him as he takes over our cities with the military. You don't have to stand with him when he mentions this week, some people want a dictator. No one wants a dictator. No one. He does. No one else does. And I said, you can come back off that. And look, Democrats aren't perfect, but I can tell you, I'm not interested in getting in your personal business. I'm not interested in telling you who you can marry. I'm not interested in trying to have the U.S. government buy businesses. I want you to be wealthy. I want you to be able to make it. And I think for us to go back to folks, to tell them, you don't have to agree 100%, and this isn't like you're choosing your team. This is people putting out solutions, and none of the things that he's proposed have improved your life.
That's right.
Prices are still more expensive. There's great unrest. If you're an agricultural producer in this country, why are we at war with Canada? Why?
Right.
They are one of our, or, you know, we can do these, and we're losing markets. So you can disagree with on things, but you need to weigh in the big picture side of this. What improves your family's life? What improves our role in the world? Do we really want to stand with Russia and North Korea, or would we rather stand with Great Britain? Would we rather stand with Sweden? Would we rather stand with Ukraine? Countries that value freedom, value human dignity. You can be a Republican and push back against this guy, and then you can hold Democrats accountable. Okay, if I vote for you, what are you going to do? And I think in Minnesota, here's what we're going to do.
That's right. That's exactly right. You know, I've been thinking a lot about Minnesota and being back home. I'm so glad to be here, Governor. And I think about my first boss in politics was Paul, as you know, Wellstone. And I've said this, and you know, folks ask me all the time, well, what's the message of the Democratic Party? And we do have a message, but I think people want a slogan, right? You know,
they do.
But let me say in the Democratic Party, I think the Democratic Party slogan should be what Paul's slogan was: "We all do better when we all do better."
It resonates so deeply.
It's just so simple.
So simple.
And it's so resonant with where we're at, because as Democrats, when we say all, we mean all. Whether you're at the top of the ladder or the bottom rung of the ladder, we want, and anyone in between, we want everyone.
It's a powerful message.
On the campaign trail, we want everyone to feel like they can actually get ahead in life, not just get by. And what's inspiring you today, right now in this moment where things, you know, it seems so weighty? I try to tell the team at the DNC all the time, right? I know the weight of the world is on our shoulders, right? It feels like it, right? But remember what is possible. That we get the opportunity, you and I, to remake the world daily, to give people hope, to give them a sense that there is a brighter future ahead.
And we stand on the shoulders of giants. I served with John Lewis in that. These are people like, you know, it is bad now with what this guy's doing, But we had folks that endured this, and John Lewis did it with grace. He did it with nonviolence, and he walked across that Edmund Pettus Bridge knowing what was going to happen on the other side. I think for all of us to step back, and to the people, look right now, courageous people going about they don't have a voice. They don't feel like they have a voice for us to speak up. And I think, Ken, I love that idea. We all do better and we all do better. And here's what I would encourage the Democratic Party. Don't forsake those that are the most vulnerable or may feel like they're in the smallest minority. We have to speak up for them. Yes. But I would also say this. We have to be the party for success, too.
Yes.
We should celebrate small business owners. I said this. Our goal is for you to become wealthy. We simply ask when you do that, pay your fair share of taxes. Contribute back. That's all we're doing. And you know how many people do that? The folks who give back, who create jobs, who are entrepreneurs, who give to charity, who are philanthropists, who give back. There's numerous examples of that. Those are ethical businesses. And I know there's a bit of debate in this, whatever. There is a moral capitalism if it is kept in check to be able to make sure workers benefit from that too. What we've allowed the Republican Party to make a mantra that, oh, we're pro-business. Singular. Large businesses and Donald Trump's businesses, not the small business owner now who's going to benefit because their workers have paid family medical leave supported by the state. They're going to benefit. You can get off and your workers don't leave you when they have a child. They go on maternity or paternity leave and they come back healthy and happy and their children are off to a good start. I think we need to broaden our net. Don't give up on those that are in the shadows, as Humphrey told us. Don't give up on those that are in the shadows. But let's not demonize the folks who are making success in that. We all want to get there. And I think at times, we sometimes tend to message to that we're opposed to people being successful. We are not. We're opposed to people gaming the system, getting rich and robbing from the rest of us.
Well, that's right. You know, I've said this just because, you know, unless you were forcibly brought here or native, right? All of our ancestors came here for the same reason. People are still coming to this country, which is the American dream. The idea that if you just work hard and play by the rules, you can get ahead. You can actually build a better life for your families. You can find success. So many countries around the world that ethos doesn't exist. You're born into your economic
Social
condition.
mobility is stopped.
That's right.
And that's what we have to, and I think that's what people are feeling. I will be honest with you. When I was growing up, the opportunity was there. Well, just for example, I think, you know, in the 1980s, the average age of home buyers was 26. Now it's nearly 40. We have students leaving with tens of thousands of dollars of student debt. You know why we didn't have student debt? Because we paid for it on the front end. Not because we worked harder. It was these kids are doing everything that's asked of them and more, except we're gaming them. And we did that to give tax cuts to the wealthiest. When we were the most successful in this country, the top paid their fair share, unions were strong, people had defined benefit pension plans, and this country worked. But what we knew at that time was not everybody. Not everybody was part of that American dream. And we as a party, what I'm really proud of is we want to bring everybody into that.
Yeah, that's right. Last thing, Governor, to our listeners who may be from Minnesota, tell them what your favorite state fair food is. You only get one. I know you have a whole list.
Look, this seems very vanilla, no pun intended, the vanilla shake at the Dairy Barn. It is a staple, and it is solid.
But have you tried the strawberry shake? The strawberry shake is my favorite.
Oh, that's too risky for me.
Well, thank you, Governor. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks for your friendship. We've known each other for 20 plus years.
I'm proud that you're there, Ken, and I said, I know it's a hard job. Look, it's a thankless job, was what people say on that. But there's a lot of folks out there, the work that you're doing is empowering folks to be able to go out and run for office. And all of this work is to make sure that some child gets a good education, some family gets health care, and that our country is a better place. So thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.